The deputy's hand was on his sidearm, 3 patrol cars blinking red and blue behind him, all pointed right at my beat-up fiberglass kayak floating dead center in the middle of what was now my lake. "Sir, you need to paddle to shore immediately," he barked, his voice tight. "We've got multiple reports of criminal trespassing on private property." I just sat there, water dripping off my $20 paddle, looking past him at Clarissa Thornwood, the HOA queen, who was standing on the lawn with her designer sunglasses and a Bluetooth megaphone, surrounded by a crowd of neighbors who had gathered to film my public shaming. A little slice of suburban gladiator combat. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, even though the adrenaline was burning a hole in my stomach. "Officer," I called out across the water, "before you decide to charge me with anything, you need to call the Coast Guard Sector 5 and run this Waterway's designation." I gestured with my paddle toward the elaborate, brand-new dock sticking out from the shore. "This is a federally recognized navigable water, and what Ms. Thornwood and her husband have built out there constitutes an illegal obstruction of navigation under Title 33 of the U.S. Code." I watched, 50 yards away, as the deputy's hand slowly dropped from his weapon, and Clarissa's triumphant smirk melted right off her face. She hadn't expected me to know the federal code, and she definitely hadn't expected me to invoke maritime law while bobbing in what she'd been calling her community's private pool for the past 3 years. "That's impossible!" she shrieked into the megaphone, the sound cracking like cheap plastic. "This is the Oakhaven Estates private facility. We took possession years ago." But she was wrong. And I had a piece of American history dated 1887. That was about to blow her little $500,000 HOA empire straight out of the water. You see, 3 weeks before that, I was a very different guy. My name is Ethan Miller, 40, a former EPA analyst turned whistleblower. I'd exposed some seriously toxic dealings by a major chemical company, and yeah, I got a nice settlement, a cool $2.5 million, but it came with the price of a permanent target on my back. Death threats, strange cars following me home. My lawyer was blunt. "Ethan, you need to disappear. Take the money and go somewhere remote. Let the heat die down. These people have long memories and deeper pockets." So, I was scrolling through remote listings at 2 a.m. when I found it. Cedar Creek Lake, a 40-acre spring-fed body of water in upstate New York, part of an old abandoned summer camp. Estate sale, cash only, quick closing, $500,000. It had its own water source. Independent of any municipal system, a little slice of private, self-sufficient paranoia, which was exactly what I needed. When the real estate agent, a nice but clearly nervous woman named Carol, met me there, her heels sinking into the mud, she gave me the only warning I got. "Full disclosure," she murmured, glancing nervously toward the heavily forested eastern shore. "The neighboring HOA, Oakhaven Estates, they've been using portions of the lake for community activities. Nothing official, of course, but I'm sure you can work something out." That should have been my first giant red flag. But I was so focused on the isolation and the purity of the water, my old EPA instincts, that I barely registered it. The lake had great bones, but the shore was a mess. Tire tracks, beer cans, and a couple of rickety docks that looked like they were held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. Near the shoreline, though, I saw something that instantly flipped my internal investigator switch back on. An old, cracked concrete post with faded numbers and what looked like a vintage U.S. lighthouse service seal. I snapped a photo, closed the deal 3 days later, and within a week, I was the legal owner of Cedar Creek Lake and the surrounding wilderness. I spent the first few nights installing hidden perimeter cameras and clearing trash. That's when I found 5 more of those concrete posts, all with the same official-looking seal. That evening, I dug deep into the National Archives online, cross-referencing old Waterway records and obscure federal acts. And that's when the whole story changed. The lake, which was actually called Navigation Post 14 in the 1880s, had been designated a federal waterway in 1887 as part of the state's massive timber boom, a network of small lakes used to float logs to bigger rivers. The kicker? That designation, under the Rivers and Harbors Act, was never officially removed by Congress. It was legally still a navigable water of the United States, and Title 33 was clear. Any structure built on navigable waters requires a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, ACE. No permit, federal felony. Fines up to $25,000 a day. That same night, I heard the roar of engines. 3 jet skis and a huge pontoon boat blasted across my lake, music blaring, people whooping and hollering. I documented everything. The faces, the boat numbers, the timestamps. I even caught them talking about Clarissa's awesome new dock and how the Oak Haven water sports program is really taking off. Water sports program. On my newly purchased, federally designated lake. The next morning, the Thornwood Construction G-Wagon, yes, a G-Wagon, pulled up to the illegal docks. Out stepped Clarissa Thornwood herself, in a power blazer and yoga pants that probably cost more than my first car, followed by her vice president, a clipboard warrior named Brenda. "Can I help you?" Clarissa called out, her voice dripping with suburban superiority, as I walked down to the shore. "Good morning," I said calmly. "I'm Ethan Miller. I own this property now. I was hoping to discuss the jet skis and the new dock." Clarissa's practiced smile tightened. "Mr. Miller, I think you're mistaken. This is the Oak Haven Estates Community Water Recreation Area. We acquired it through adverse possession and community development rights 3 years ago." I pulled out my phone, started recording, and leveled the bomb. Adverse possession? That's interesting. Did you file that claim with the county? Because they don't have it. More importantly, when your husband's construction company built that dock, which looks a little rickety for a $500,000 operation. By the way, did you get the federal permit required for construction on a federally designated navigable waterway? The silence was instant and delicious. Brenda, the clipboard lady, went sheet white. Clarissa's face cycled through a dozen shades of scarlet before she finally screeched, "The Army Corps of what? That's absurd. This is a private lake in a residential neighborhood." "It doesn't have to connect to the ocean right now, Mrs. Thornwood. The designation was never officially removed. It is governed by laws older than your grandfather, and those laws supersede any tiny little HOA rule you wrote up in a Zoom meeting. I have the National Archive documents. You have 30 days to remove all your illegal structures and commercial operations. Or, I'm sending this packet of information straight to the ACE and the U.S. Attorney's Office." As she frantically dialed her lawyer, I turned to Brenda. "Miss, you've been running an illegal commercial enterprise on federal water that belongs to me. Think about the liability. When someone gets injured on those unpermitted docks, your insurance company will evaporate faster than morning dew." Brenda looked like she might throw up, and even Clarissa's high-priced attorney, who showed up an hour later, started whispering urgently to her, clearly worried. The emergency board meeting that night was pure cinema. Clarissa had packed the room with her supporters, the families who got cheap jet ski rentals. But I had an unexpected ally, Mr. Henry Vance, an old-school board member and retired accountant who was sick of Clarissa's corruption. He'd contacted me earlier, admitting Clarissa had been hiding the books for years. I walked into the meeting in my only blazer and watched the room stop talking. Clarissa tried to kick me out. "This is for residents only." "I own the lake you're discussing," I countered smoothly. "I have standing. And I'm recording this meeting, as is my right under state law." The real turning point came when Clarissa, trying to defend her adverse possession claim, got frustrated. Her husband, Nathaniel Thornwood, the construction magnate, stepped in. "Folks, this outsider is trying to steal the amenities we built for you." "Built on my property," I corrected, "and on federally protected water. By the way, how much of the $96,000 annual revenue from Oak Haven Water Sports went back into community improvements?" Before Clarissa could lie, Henry Vance, my ally, stood up. "Clarissa, I move for an emergency independent audit of the last 3 years of financials. The community deserves transparency." Other voices joined in, demanding the books. Then, in a moment of brilliant cinematic stupidity, Nathaniel blurted out, "We tried to buy the lake." The room went silent. I let the weight of the moment crush Clarissa. "You tried to buy it?" I repeated, my voice calm but devastating. "You can't claim adverse possession on something you admit you knew belonged to someone else. That's an admission of theft, Mr. Thornwood." Clarissa looked like she wanted to murder her own husband. Their lawyer, a guy named Mark, grabbed his briefcase and announced, "I am withdrawing as counsel for the board effective immediately," and bolted. The board was in total meltdown. Later that night, I was documenting the shoreline when Nathaniel and two of his workers showed up on ATVs trying to haul away the metal jet ski rails. "These are my company's assets!" he yelled, sweating under his hard hat. "They are evidence of a federal crime," I stated, pulling out my phone to record. "If you touch them, you're adding obstruction of justice to your charges. That decision is on you, but these two men," I nodded to his workers, "they don't need to ruin their lives for your illegal decisions." The two workers dropped their helmets, climbed back on their ATVs, and drove away, leaving Nathaniel alone, defeated. But desperate people do desperate things. At 3 a.m., I heard the crunch of footsteps. Clarissa came onto my property and slashed my tires and poured sugar into my gas tank, a childish but effective attempt to strand me. I recorded the whole thing and called 911. When the deputies arrived, she had run, but she had dropped one thing: a distinctive diamond-encrusted tennis bracelet watch. They bagged it for prints and DNA. Sergeant Ramirez, the senior officer, looked at me and said, "Mr. Miller, given the federal jurisdiction, the embezzlement, and the clear criminal intent, I'm recommending you call the FBI. This is now organized crime." The next morning, I called the Army Corps of Engineers. By noon, 3 AC trucks were at the lake. Their field inspector, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, took one look at the docks. "This is worse than you described," she sighed. 43 separate federal violations? Conservatively, $650,000 in fines, just from our office. The U.S. Attorney will handle the criminal side. The dominoes fell fast. Clarissa, facing the total collapse of her life, had a complete mental breakdown and attempted suicide. She survived but was hospitalized. Nathaniel was arrested later that afternoon when the watch came back with Clarissa's prints. Henry Vance and Sarah Peaton, the forensic accountant, confirmed the embezzlement of nearly $250,000, leaving the HOA bankrupt. 6 months later, the HOA was dissolved. Nathaniel got 2 years, and Clarissa, thanks to her mental state, got 18 months in a federal facility. I accepted a consulting job with the EPA to oversee the lake's remediation, a beautiful full circle. The illegal docks were removed, the water was cleaned, and the old camp buildings were renovated into an environmental education center, open to the public. One evening, I was on the newly built, ACE-permitted small dock watching the sunset. Henry Vance drove up in his sensible sedan. "Ethan," he smiled, "thought you should see this." He handed me a newspaper clipping from Arizona. Clarissa Thornwood, now on parole, had just been arrested for trying to claim ownership of the community pool at her new condo complex. "Some people never learn," I laughed. "No," Henry agreed, "but communities do. Oak Haven learned that federal law, transparency, and simple honesty are all stronger than one tyrant's ambition." I kept the lake, but I opened most of the shoreline to the local community, managed by a new conservation group. Families are back here now swimming, kayaking, legally and safely. The original 1887 designation, Navigation Post 14, is on a plaque, a quiet monument to how old laws can defeat modern greed. That lake was meant to be my hiding place, but instead, it became a battleground that reminded me I still have a fight left in me and a community worth protecting. So here's the thing. I won. But tell me, was it right for me, an outsider, to completely destroy their HOA and their community, even if it was built on lies? Or was I simply bringing the law down on people who deserved it? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story about how a little-known federal code beat a massive HOA, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice. Because I still keep those security cameras running and the Army Corps on speed dial. You never know when the next suburban tyrant is going to try and steal what's yours.